Back in the city, the Frost Monarch looks over, thinking that he doesn't know about that ant who is healing humans, but this one is certainly an issue. He knows he's seen it before, the Knight of Death, one of the two wings of the Shadow Army, the Shadow, Igris. Now that it's able to use its full power, it's quite bothersome. They can regenerate as long as the Shadow Monarch still has mana, but Frosty can't recover the mana he used for transformation. Dodging one of Igris's slashes, the Monarch tells him not to even think about doing something so meaningless, and questions if he thinks he can hold out much longer against him. Stabbing his sword into the ground, Jin peers through and begins walking through the gate in his cape. Frosty is unnerved as the beast's teeth drop to the floor. Jin says the Beast Monarch is dead, and Frosty is alarmed that he killed the Beast Monarch in only the few minutes he was gone. Jin states the Plague Monarch, the Beast Monarch, and the Frost Monarch. The deaths of these three monarchs will serve as a warning to the other monarchs. Angrily retaliating, Frosty's suddenly stabbed with a dagger, then another. He prepares a blast breath, but Jin covers his mouth, summons a dagger, and slashes him across the torso. He says the beast died on the fourth strike and wonders how much longer Frosty can survive. His skin crackles and he screams as his vessel breaks and dissolves into ashes that float up the sky. Baru presents himself and Jin asks about the person who protected him earlier. He's told that he disappeared earlier as he spots a dagger on the floor and picks it up. Leaving bloody handprints and dragging his nub on the wall, he falls. Breathing heavily while his body deteriorates, Sung Il-hwan guesses that this is the consequence of receiving God's power with a mere human body. It's fine though, this is how it should be, he says. Suddenly a blade spins at his boot, and Jin asks if he really thought he wouldn't know if he left like that. He questions why he left without a word again. A gate. A giant hole that calls forth demonic beasts. After clearing the dungeon boss of the gate, you must escape the gate within an hour. However, Sung Il-hwan had no choice but to be trapped within the dimensional rift, sitting there, weakening. The rulers lent him their strength and requested for him to stop the monarchs, including the Shadow Monarch, who was soon to be born. After losing all means of escape, he had no choice. He returned back to Earth as the ruler's emissary, with a heavy responsibility. However, he couldn't fulfill that responsibility. Seeing Jin Woo in Japan caused him to whimper, although he knew that the worst calamity of humanity resided inside that body. He couldn't do anything other than observe from a distance. Meanwhile, the rulers whose sole focus was to stop the complete advent of the Shadow Monarch started to change their stances, and finally the brightest fragment of brilliant light issued him a new order: protect the Shadow Monarch. They had realized that in order to stop the Monarch's plan, they needed the power of the Shadow Monarch. The only ones able to stop the destruction were the soldiers of the King of Dragons, who were going to arrive before the soldiers of the heavens. It was a huge gamble, not knowing whether they would side with the humans or the monarchs. But now, we know the results. That's why he helped Jin. He says he didn't want to show Jin this side of him. Jin cries for his father, who asks if he hated him. Jin confirms and Sung Il-hwan apologizes. Jin says that when he first started out as a hunter, when he was at death's door, when he barely survived to see Mom and Jinnah again, his father appeared in his mind, and he always hated him whenever it happened. But he also missed him. What about you? Jin asks. Il-hwan looks up as Jin asks if he missed him. Know them. Tears flood as he says he missed them all the time. Even though he couldn't see him, he was happy about the fact that he was able to see Jin from afar. Taking a foot, he stands and hugs Jin, telling him he's grown well. Jin Woo cries and balls a fist as he asks if it's the rulers that are controlling him and throwing him away. But Il-hwan responds that they simply gave him an opportunity to make a choice. He chose to protect him, and he doesn't regret a single thing about it. Jin's hand opens, and he hugs his father again as he fades, saying he wanted to talk more. He wanted to stay with him longer. He apologizes for not being a great father and shatters before Jin. Holding the air, he clenches his fist and screams through the city. Meanwhile, in the apartment, Kyung-hee names Jinnah and invites her to move, saying she feels like they can move now. Tears stream while Jin screams at the monarchs, telling them they will definitely pay the price for what happened today. The day that the Shadow Monarch's outcries shook the world was the day when the prelude to war rose. A drone reports that Hunter Thomas Andre is not in a life-threatening condition, and they can see that ambulances on the scene are transporting the injured to local hospitals. The monster that massacred the citizens has stopped moving. Only their traces remained after they turned to ashes. Jin-woo hugs his family, while Choi Jong-in checks up on Baek Yoon-ho, and Woo Jin-chul guesses it's over now, and recalls the funeral when Jin told him he can give thanks after he kills the Frost Monarch. Dropping his head, he thanks the hunter. The Hunter Bureau announced that the monsters that appeared in the city are unidentifiable demonic beasts. The damage done to the city by the demonic beasts was tremendous. However, the true calamity was about to come in a few days. Thousands of hunters stand by as Liu Zhigang is introduced to the gate and calls the colossal gate massive like he's heard, saying that even if all the hunters in the world gathered, they could just be sucked up into that gate and vanish. Thomas announces it will start soon, while the chairman thinks that this is the first time so many hunters from all around the world have gathered in one place and wonders how many of them will survive. Jin-woo stands afar, looking rizzy. Cha Hae-in says that she's never seen him this nervous before. Soon, the gate will open. The gate cracks and everyone prepares for battle. Black aura oozes out as they see it's a massive army. Jin realizes something as arisen silver soldiers and giant dragons make their way out of the gate. One looks cooler than the rest. Screaming to commence the attack, tanks prepare alongside healers and mages when suddenly they're all ordered not to move. A cease attack is passed along as Chairman Wu asks why they're stopping. The silver soldiers get lower as Choi questions what he's thinking, wondering if they're really planning on having a face-off without attacking the beasts while they're still mid-air. Standing in place, Jin walks forth toward the silver soldier army. Standing before the soldier, they trade gazes when suddenly it smashes its knee into the ground, presenting itself as Grand Marshal Bellion. The entire Shadow Army bows to respectfully greet their liege. The chairman is left in awe alongside Thomas Andre and Leonard, who knows that even just one of the dragons could threaten humanity, yet there are three of them gathered in one place. Jin-woo realizes that this is the real Shadow Army Ashbourne left behind for him. Reflecting on the strength of his own army, he knows that now the real war starts.